Gentlemen, and welcome to Midwest City Council for November 28th, 2017. Glenn, glad to see you back in the audience. I'll call this meeting to order. I'd like to introduce two young ladies from Carl Albert High School, Amy Wild and Skylin White. They'll be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening. They're both seniors at Carl Albert and plan to go into the military after they graduate. This time, could I ask Mr. Sullivan to come forward and lead us in the invocation? Everybody stand, please.
Right there, you're perfect. I'll ask you to bow with me, please. Gracious Lord, we're blessed to be in your presence this evening. Father, we thank you so much for this occasion. And Father, I ask your wisdom and discernment be upon this council tonight and the decisions that they have before them. Father, we're blessed to live in a great city with very dedicated men and women who serve this city professionally. We thank you for the blessing of community. Father, this state and this nation, we give you glory and honor for those blessings. I'm thankful, Lord, for those men and women who are all over the world defending the freedoms of this nation and the sacrifice that they're making this evening as well. Lord, we thank you so much for the ultimate example of sacrifice and service through the sacrifice of your Son, Jesus. Father, we pray that our lives will emulate his life better each day that we live. Thank you, Jesus, for being willing to go to the cross for us. It's in his name I pray. Amen.
Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Girls, ladies, the mayor will have a picture made with you. If you'll just get on each side of him. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go around the horseshoe for community announcements. Ms. Hunt, could you come down and kind of fill us in on what you got?
Thank you. First, Mayor and Council, I'd like to remind you that the 2017 Storyland Christmas opens on Friday evening in the Charles J. Johnson Central Park and Town Center Plaza. We kick off the event this year at 6 p.m. with the lighting of the 40-foot Christmas tree, and Santa will be on hand and entertainment as well. And then we conclude or go through December 17 for that event. So we're hoping that we'll have great weather and good attendance, and we'll have a lot of fun as we celebrate Christmas here in Midwest City. It's a good complement to our holiday lights drive-through that started actually 2 weeks ago. And then I'd also like to mention that we have a new holiday attraction in town that opened on Black Friday, North Pole Adventure. And they are located in the former Hobby Lobby facility in Gateway Plaza, which is located at Aerodepot and Southeast 15th Street. And the hours, well, first of all, their website, you can get all kinds of information from it, including the hours of operation, if you go to northpoleadventure.org. And their hours of operation now are weekdays 5:30 to 8 p.m. On Saturday, they're open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. and on Sunday, noon to 8 p.m. And those hours are extended beginning December 18th, but you can check all of that out on their website. We are very excited to have this new attraction here in Midwest City. We feel like it is a great complement to what we already offer our citizens with our Holiday Light Spectacular and Storyland Christmas. We are hoping to position going forward that Midwest City is the place to be during the holidays in Central Oklahoma, and look forward to that opportunity working with Mr. Connor and his staff. It is a 35,000 square foot facility that features all things Christmas. The North Pole Adventure is literally what it's all about, with rooms sectioned off for an array of activities, including an elf university, a place where they make crafts. Mrs. Claus has a bakery, many, many things, including 2 live reindeer that are on visit from some country far, far away. So it is, it's a great, great attraction, and we're actually doing some cooperative marketing with Holiday Light, Storyland, and North Pole Adventure, print, advertising, radio, and television. And Mr. Connor has been incredibly open and willing and cooperative and excited, if you will, about what we already have going on here in Midwest City and what his company brings to the table, which is another great reason for people to visit Midwest City during the holidays. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ms. Eads?
Just to be an equal opportunist, I was going to encourage everyone to go out to support Carl Albert High School as they play in the championship game this Friday night against Bishop McGuinness. So I wish them all the best in that game. So if you are so inclined, find yourself with need for something to do Friday night, please go support those kids.
And also congratulations to the Bombers on a very successful season this year. I did have the opportunity to attend a awards ceremony last Saturday, I'm sorry, when Midwest City was awarded a award from Keep Oklahoma Beautiful Foundation, in which we were in competition with Tulsa and Norman on how well we clean up our city. If you recall, back in the summer, we opened up the bicycle trails up by the Soldier Creek Industrial Park. Before that could happen, our stormwater quality folks and some other volunteers from the city got together and got 60 plus volunteers together, and we went out there and cleaned that thing up. We collected about 5,000 pounds of trash, 500 tires, and sundry other things that have been dumped out there since statehood. For our efforts, we won a statewide award, and congratulations to the guys and girls over at Stormwater and all of those who volunteered to go out there and help clean that up. And also, we just got informed tonight that we've been identified as a clean community by the state of Oklahoma, and we'll be hearing more of that and being awarded that award in a couple of months in the future. So Midwest City is on the right track of being a clean community and providing you with a clean environment. So congratulations to all those who are participating in that. Anything else? Anything? All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we'll move into our consent agenda. These items are placed on the consent agenda, so members of the council, by unanimous consent, can approve routine agenda items by one motion. If any item proposed does not meet with the approval of all council members, or members of the audience wish to discuss an item, it will be removed and heard in regular order.
Mayor, and we'd also request that item C1 be removed.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 1 and
So
item
moved.
10. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Go into the discussion items of our agenda.
Item C1, we would request that in the minutes on C10 and D8, those two agenda items, that we change the date from December 12th to December 14th.
Move to,
Other way around, I'm sorry. We have a motion?
We have a motion and we have a second to correct the minutes from the last meeting. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention. Next item.
This is discussion consideration of approving a resolution establishing 100% of all fees and taxes for 911 emergency telephone service to be collected by ACOG for the period July 1, 2017 through June 30th, 2018. The attached resolution allows ACOG to collect 100% of all fees and taxes for 911 emergency telephone services to be collected by ACOG for the period of July 2017 through June 30th of 2018. Mike, you want to come up? Councilman, did you have a question?
well, I do. So as we're working through this, trying to figure this out, and we've got the acting director of ACOG here too, he might want to step up because there might be a few questions for him. So we give roughly $456,000 per year to ACOG, just for 911, is that correct?
I'm assuming that's correct, sir, yes.
Actually, that is a portion, that's on the 25 cents for the latest number.
Okay, so that's
Yeah,
just,
some
that's
of
just the 25 cents.
Yeah, some of the money collected is on cellular phones, and some of it is on hardwire phones. And as you might imagine, the number of hardwire phones have gone down drastically.
So
And that's what's caused us to try to get more money from cellular phones.
The 25 cents makes up that $456,000. And ACOG didn't lobby for that. As a matter of fact, they didn't take a stance on it when it came in front of the legislature. It was people like you and in other cities that pushed for this. And 0.6% was, our 6% was going to go, our 6 cents of the 25 cents was going to go back to the state, and the other 19 cents was supposed to come back to the cities. But ACOG is not real happy about releasing their portion of that. Is that correct?
Well, ACOG has always, since I believe 1989, I think, I was trying to think of the year, I think it was 89, when we started the 911 group through ACOG. They've always collected, the money has always been collected at ACOG on behalf of the different cities.
So how much total do we give to ACOG for 911 taxes? 0.25, that's 456,000. What's the total they get every year from us?
The total amount that they receive, I mean, obviously it varies each month. You know, it varies. The only thing that I'm really aware of is the last 25 cents. I don't receive any numbers. The mayor serves on the executive group, not to put anything off to him, but the executive group at ACOG, they deal with the funds. I'm on the technical group, and we deal with what type of equipment we want to purchase and what type of training we want to provide. So
The reason I pulled this is I want to make ACOG, and you're the newest acting director, I want to make you very aware that at least I am very dissatisfied with the numbers. I think you guys are sitting on somewhere around $20 million in your 911 budget, and I think you guys are getting really greedy taking the 19 cents that you guys didn't even lobby for and you guys didn't take a position on. I'm going to ask in 4 months from now, not only on this issue, but we look at what the dollar amounts that the city gives to ACOG in all forms, and we look at just how much of a donor city we are. And if those numbers are as inflated as these numbers are in your favor as opposed to ours, I'm gonna be for kicking you guys to the curb. And I just wanted that known. Now, I don't know how the rest of the council sits. They're probably gonna be a little bit more diplomatic than I am.
Mike, when you said something just a minute ago that when you purchase equipment, who pays for that equipment that you're purchasing?
Any equipment pertaining to 911 services is purchased by ACOG. We don't spend any money. We pay the salaries of our employees. We pay for radio equipment, but like your 911 system that operates allows people to call 911, all that money is paid. The equipment and the maintenance of that equipment is paid through ACOG.
When was the last time you replaced any big equipment?
You know, we have ongoing updates. They go in there and update things. They refer to it as next generation 911, and that's kind of where we're at. As a matter of fact, we have a piece of equipment that is yet to come out. We're waiting on Oklahoma City to purchase their equipment so we can do a metro-wide education program, but it's called Text to 911. So that'll be the next piece of equipment that will be put into place.
Is Oklahoma City involved in this project too?
Oklahoma City they purchased their own equipment, and so we were just, it's important to do a public education campaign together. So we can say, if you're in the metro area, you can use Text to 911. They're supposed to have that piece of equipment in by the first of the year, I understand.
So did Oklahoma City, in your understanding, do they do their own because they felt that it was a better use of the money to keep that tax from the cell phones and everything else in-house so they could take care of everything?
Well, I can't really speak for them, but I know that they get the biggest portion of their money, yes.
Okay.
So
Sean,
you say they give the
I would just encourage you really quickly to look at the resolution, the proposed resolution, which specifies, you're talking about the 25-cent number, but the proposed resolution shows a 75-cent monthly fee on each wireless telephone connection, a 75-cent monthly fee on each service that is enabled by voice over internet protocol or internet protocol, and a 75-cent on each prepaid wireless retail transaction occurring in the state. So there's
So-
another.
So it used to be 50, now it's 25. So can we extrapolate that if 456,000 is off of 25 cents, that it's more like almost 1.5 million that we're giving out the 75 cents?
I don't believe that to be the case because so much of that is going to be on hardwired phones. That first 50 cents, a lot of that's going to be on hardwired phones. And there has been a little bit of a challenge collecting money on voice over IP and some of those other types of services.
But these are figures within 4 months. We can find out exactly how much tax for 911, whether it's a hard landline or a cell phone or the voice via
Like
whatever.
Magic Jack phones,
Yeah.
for example,
Yeah.
or the
But we
voice
can
over
figure out
internet.
how much money that we are actually donating.
We'll be able to figure out exactly what is collected. Now, the first 50 cents goes directly from the carrier to ACOG. The other 25 cents goes to the state first, and then ACOG collects the money from them.
What does the state do with the money?
Well, there's 6 cents that goes to the state, and they now have a 911 coordinator, and they give some, they're going to give some grants out, and then they also try to do statewide education programs on 911.
But what would a grant wouldn't help the ones that are donating? I mean, if they're paying that type of money every month, the grant would not help them at all. So what is the purpose of the grant? You said state give a grant out?
Well, there's some throughout the state there. It was a statewide elections what took place, and there's some communities out there that don't have what we call phase 2 wireless, where they, if you're making a cellular phone call, they can't tell where you're calling from. So they're trying to get some of these communities throughout the state just caught up. You want to have the same service for 911, whether you're in Midwest City or you're traveling to Amarillo and you happen to be in Elk City. So that's what we're trying to do, is get the state up to speed so that they'll have the same level of service everywhere in Oklahoma.
So are they donating also?
Well, they do, but obviously, if you're in a county where you've only got 1,200 people, you don't generate a lot of revenues, you know, and some of these counties are quite small.
Please keep in mind that ACOG is central Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And dealing with, there's another similar organization up by Tulsa, and there's a couple more throughout the state. So when we're talking about ACOG, it's just the counties in and around the metropolitan area. Now, ACOG, since it was incepted, has been a clearinghouse to get 911 on board through all the communities in its service area. That was the main purpose. The main purpose was to do bulk purchases of this equipment, which is expensive, and then ensure that all the areas or all the cities in the metropolitan area were on the same level. That was the purpose. That's the mission statement of ACOG, along with some others. With the inception of the 25 cent at the state level and them poking their finger in it, it's got a little bit more convoluted. And actually, the state, as a result of that vote, not only gets 6 cents of every 25 cents that's collected off cell phone, they also established a 19-member board in which ACOG has 1 seat on that board, and established a statewide 911 coordinator, which basically duplicated the efforts of ACOG and the other COGs in the state. I just say that by, we can get your figures and figure out where we're at. And there has been ongoing conversations on how much money comes back to each of the
But there's been
cities
ongoing
participating.
conversation about this, from what I understand, for a long, long time, and ACOG hasn't gotten off high center.
Well, there's
So here's my question to Phil. The 50 cents is already going to you guys. That's already been collected. This new 25 cents that you guys have zero skin in the game and you guys are wanting to benefit off of, what happens if we just say no to this? Can we just keep that 19 cents? Then I say that we actually just table this until the next meeting and find out. Because I mean, guys, you didn't help get this passed. And you've had conversations about how you're going to get off a high center for a long time, and you've never gotten off high center, and I do apologize to you. You are the new acting director. But that doesn't mean that you don't get to pay for the sins of your fathers. So I myself think that that's what we should do.
Let me ask Mike, well, okay, with us not taking any action on this tonight, where does that you stand at for the 911?
Puts us 5.5 months back instead of 5, because this is from June 30th, so it's not like it's gonna be anything indifferent.
As you mentioned, this contract should have been put out to us long ago, and we should have approved it. It's basically kind of rolled over into the fiscal year that we're in now. So we're like midways through that, and it'll be good. This contract would only be good till June 30th of 2018. We're working without a contract at this time.
Okay.
I think that if you were to table this, that they would continue to collect the fees just like they do.
All right.
It would be my suggestion that we go ahead and move forward with this with the caveat that we start collecting that information that you're wanting and come back to city council
No, but if
before we go into another contract
Yeah,
year.
but then that gives them until June 30th. And if we find out from Phil that we can just keep that 19 cents and say thanks but no thanks, I'd rather do that.
Well, there's no guarantee that we're going to be able to.
I understand that, so
because of
2
the
extra
state
weeks
laws.
isn't gonna make a difference. We're already operating on, I mean, this contract should have been done on July 1st.
I agree.
For whatever reason, it hasn't. It's gotten here. 2 more weeks isn't going to make a difference one way or another. That's just my opinion. I'm one of 7 people.
I have a question also, and this really goes to Phil also. Phil, I understand Oklahoma City is not a participant in ACOG. It's on. sorry. I understand that Oklahoma City is not a participant in ACOG. I would be curious to see if there was a way for us to get some information on what Oklahoma City does as far as their operation for their 911 system, what they take in and how much their cost is, and if there is a surplus type of thing that they're allowed to keep a net of. Because I think Councilman Reed was offering up the idea if we could try to operate the 911 system ourselves and what that kind of cost would look like as opposed to the arrangement that we currently have with ACOG.
Well,
So,
well,
and-
Susan, first of all, he said that Oklahoma City is one of the largest donors, is that correct?
ACOG is, Oklahoma City is not part of the 911 system.
Okay.
911 system run through ACOG. It is a member of ACOG, however.
It's a member,
But
not-
I think that, I mean, to answer your question, I'm sure we could dig into their budgets a little bit and determine how much revenue they're getting through 911. We can try to figure out how much they're spending on that and whether they do have some surplus funds that result from it.
And ultimately, Mr. Henson, that's really where my question goes. I mean, and I may have misspoken with that because I'm not knowledgeable about the facts, but they are currently operating their own 911 system. And what I'm curious about is, you know, if we want to look at undertaking this endeavor, let's look at a community that, although they're larger than we are they netting a profit out of this situation? And just so we have something to kind of examine and consider.
Well,
The
it's-
other question I'd like answered on with Oklahoma City, are they collecting the entire are they collecting that 50 cents also, and ACOG's not getting any of it?
I believe that is the case.
So, I mean, we need to look at the whole picture if we're going to look at that.
The issue I have is if we're collecting a fee from our citizens,
We're not, excuse me, Councilman,
But our-
that money is the 50 cents is going directly to ACOG for the 50 cents, and the 25 cents is being remitted to ACOG by the carriers.
okay, if our citizens are being charged a service fee or a tax, whatever it is, and that money that they're paying is basically helping supplement another community that doesn't have the number of telephones or phone, either way, the hard lines or the cell phones. If our citizens are being taxed to help support somebody else, that's where I have the issue.
And it's $456,000. We just asked our citizens to raise sales tax here. You know, $456,000 is a pretty good chunk of change. And if at the end of the day, it's 1.5 million when you take the whole 75 cents, and we can fund our 911 and stop being a donor and actually put more money in the general fund, I think this is just a case of ACOG being greedy. And if you'd left that 19 cents to the cities, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But like I said, sins of the father, you're getting to pay for it.
So,
I think-
Councilman
let
Reed, are
me
you
do
moving?
One quick thing. The reason for ACOG, and I used to be on a few committees down there at ACOG once upon a time, and the purpose of ACOG, and I'm not arguing just whatever you want to do on this, but the purpose of ACOG is you get all these communities and you have a network. For example, like I'll say Luther. I don't know how much Luther pays, but I know that if I happen to be in a car wreck in Luther, I'm sure as heck gonna hope that they're hooked in with this ACOG deal so that when I call on my cell phone, they can tell that I'm in Luther. I mean, so that part of it it doesn't just benefit the guy living in Jones or the guy living in Luther. Some of these small outlying communities, in the event that one of us or one of our children or one of our family members has a car wreck there, that's part of this overreaching thing that ACOG does. It's kind of like this bit of let's get out of the United Nations, and no, there's a reason for some of these organizations that you have to have some of these just for safety, and they lobby a heck of a lot for our cities in this part of the state. it goes beyond just things like this, but you kind of look at it that way a little bit. Some of these small communities, they wouldn't even have a 911, and it's easy for me to go, I don't care about them, but if I have a car wreck there on Tuesday, I'm sure hoping that they're hooked in with this.
Well, but it seems like everybody follows Oklahoma City because they're the 800-pound gorilla. Oklahoma City's doing this on their own. Everybody's sitting here waiting until the text to 911 comes out from Oklahoma City so we can all get on the same page. We can still be a member of ACOG.
Right.
We can still support ACOG, but we can just decide we're not going to support you with our dollars for 911. And everybody follows Oklahoma City in the Metroplex, and then ACOG picks up the holes. Look, we're not part of the hole. We're part of the people trying to fill the hole, and I just don't think that we should be doing that, especially if we can adequately run it, and we're following Oklahoma City's lead anyway. I think that all that stuff that you just were concerned about gets picked up because of that. So
And-
I just make a motion to table this and bring it back in 2 weeks.
I would add the caveat, Mike, that when we meet in 2 weeks, that we have a estimate on the cost value of the equipment that we have in place and future cost value of future upgrades.
What-
And exactly what kind of budgetary issues that we're going to face as a city in addition if we pull out versus stay in. And we can also get the figures on exactly the distribution of the funds.
Okay, since Matt can't make a motion as the mayor, I'm going to make a motion to incorporate everything that he just said into my motion.
And I'm going to second your motion.
The question I had was that it's 2 weeks ago.
We can table it again. I mean, again, this is a June 30th thing.
This is,
As I mentioned, I know at least the 25 cent goes to the tax commission and then comes to ACOG. I believe the other comes directly from the carriers to ACOG. And so I think the two of them would have the records that we need. I think we can pull those together and at least get the money that's coming in on our behalf, and then we'll have to talk to some vendors about what it would cost us to have our own equipment.
And I'm almost certain that ACOG's already got those numbers, and we just have to pull them. Mr. Sharp, I kind of want to apologize to you.
That's fine. That's
You
fine.
didn't come here prepared to talk 911, and actually your expertise is in transportation. And I'm sorry you got pulled into this discussion, but as acting director.
That's fine. And I'd just like to reiterate what Councilman Dawkins says. I mean, it's really, what we've operated on was a volume discount in the sense that we can go out and get 30 or so of these systems for our communities, and therefore the cost goes down. And then secondly, it's the ability from city to be able to communicate with the next city in regards to handing off calls and coordinating in regards to 911 type issues.
So
And
does Oklahoma
that's
City
possible
have
right
any
now.
issues with handing off calls? I mean, are
No.
they? So
No,
it can
we
be done
coordinate
without
with
being
them.
part of ACOG on this issue?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, I do believe I have a motion on the floor,
second, yes.
and I have a second. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention. Motion carries. Mr. Sharp, I think you're up again, sir.
This is discussion consideration of a presentation by John Sharp of the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments regarding an update on the Regional Transit Authority Task Force.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. Good evening, citizens. Just wanted to give you an update. Don't know how much you know about this. Folks in the crowd, how many people know about the Regional Transit Dialogue? All right, we got a couple. Thank you very much. Let me jump into this and kind of go over some of the things that we've been doing the last probably 12 years. I'll probably just face this way, I think. It really started in 2005 with the Regional Fixed Guideway Study. This was to look at the region as a whole and try and figure out what we could do in regards to commuter rail, an increased or enhanced transit, to allow the cities here in Central Oklahoma to to move around in regards to rail transportation and transit rather than our highway system and our road system. So we started off many years ago looking at this, and it led to a regional transit dialogue. Then it went to an intermodal hub study in downtown at the Santa Fe, downtown streetcar, and now we're moving even further along into the commuter rail study, which we've done recently. So this map here on the screen that you see is really the fixed guideway study that was done in 2005, and it was paid for by Oklahoma City and COPPA, and it really looked at the whole metro area in regards to how could we connect different communities together. And it really was thinking about, let's look into the future, into 2030 as possibly a time to get this completed. So really it looked at high capacity transit, enhanced bus, a central hub, and like a downtown circulator, which you'll probably see a little bit about in the future. So back in 2009, ACOG and its members got together and took this a stage further and looked at the cost of these types of things and how to put this together, and try to figure out what sort of structure we needed to get together in a region to move this forward. And then made recommendations as to the pieces of the puzzle that need to be put in place in order for this to be successful. And then looked at how this system should be put together from the standpoint of governance or building the group together. So first of all, the intermodal hub study was downtown Oklahoma City, and that was a partnership between ACOG, ODOT, Oklahoma City, and COPPA, and this was an upgrade of the Santa Fe. The Santa Fe obviously is where the Amtrak train currently comes through, and it is only obviously working between Oklahoma City and south to Fort Worth. But we felt like this was a facility that could be used over and over again as a central hub for the whole region. So those four entities put together a package of about $28 million. We got a Tiger grant for about $13 million of this to upgrade the Santa Fe station so that it could be made up to date and usable for many different purposes. As you probably know, Oklahoma City has started putting rails in the downtown area going through to Bricktown, and this is going to be the streetcar route. It should be open somewhere around Christmas time, so this Christmas of 2018. So this was one of the ideas and concepts that was put together in 2005, and obviously it takes a few years to get this down the ground, but this is where they currently are today. And you can kind of see the loop going to the east is through Bricktown area, just south of the ballpark, and the north it spans up to St. Anthony's Hospital. So this is devised that once you get in the downtown area, this is a way of moving around. The commuter corridor study was to look at obviously the whole region and a much greater area to look at, and it was looking at some of the information that was first studied in the Fixed Guideway report from 2005. And the cities on the left are the cities that helped fund and started off the process. But we also added in a number of citizens and businesses and other folks that were interested in this to kind of make a public-private partnership of folks that would be interested in this from a regional standpoint. And the three spokes that really came to the forefront were Oklahoma City to Edmond, Oklahoma City to Midwest City and Tinker, and then Oklahoma City down to Norman. Those were the three that seemed like they were going to get the highest ridership, and at the same time those were very attractive from the standpoint of activity centers and employment centers that could be linked up in the region. Along with that came House Bill 2480, and Representative Joyner and the Oklahoma City Chamber and ACOG worked hard in order to get this bill passed. This allows us to actually create the entity and also to develop the footprint of the entity, as in how big of an area is this? Is it by city, is it by county, or is it by a defined area? And currently we're looking at precincts in order to build this particular area. So the north corridor goes from downtown Oklahoma City up to downtown Edmond. There are no stations along this route currently. And Amtrak ran a demonstration project earlier in the year, and the ACOG staff and some of the board went on the trip from downtown Oklahoma City on an Amtrak train up to Guthrie, and some of them stayed on the train and went to Kansas City. but it really gave you an idea of what could be, how you could connect these cities together. There were about 300 people in Edmond and about 200 people in Guthrie that welcomed the train. I think there's a lot of interest for this, but this is the route from downtown Oklahoma City, and the little circles that you see on this map are possible stations that could be put in along the route. 23rd Street, State Capitol, 63rd, Britain, and then on the south side of Edmond, and possibly a couple more going into Edmond. And you see some rough figures there of how much money this might cost. The commuter rail portion of this would be somewhere in the 300 million mark, and they're estimated about 5,700 passengers a day on this particular route. The south route goes from same area, the Santa Fe, down to down through Capitol Hill, down to Crossroads Mall, into Moore, and then down into Norman. And the circles there, yet again, are depicting possible locations. There's obviously a railway station in Norman right now. I've caught the train from there to Fort Worth. There's also the possibility of having a train station next to campus, so that would be somewhere around Lindsay, which would give you access to football games and campus type activities. And it would give students the opportunity to then go the other direction, so the students could go to Oklahoma City, Midwest City, and Edmond, and so forth. So this is we always have to remember this is a two-way street or a two-way track. And this is the east corridor going from downtown Oklahoma City out to Tinker Air Force Base on the east side on Douglas. This cost is approximately $320 to $400 million. And there were different discussions on this. This is the locally preferred alternate of the final route. There were other routes looked at using a lot of the railway line that's in place. And actually from Sooner Road down towards the Air Force Base, a lot of this particular area is on tracks that are already there. This particular route right across here is on Reno. And I remember some of the folks on the committee going, well, why would you want to go down Reno? That's not a very nice place to go down. And it just so happens, if you've gone through downtown Oklahoma City recently, there are suddenly all these hotels moving east on Reno. And so those old industrial areas that were once kind of eyesores and, well, no one's going to go there, all of a sudden there are hotels going east towards Eastern. And so this area is starting to pick up. It stops twice in Del City. Once it's over by Scott Street, and then once it's obviously the boundary between Del City and Midwest City. So this is a streetcar. So this is not a heavy commuter rail type, utility type vehicle. This is a streetcar. So this is not unlike what Oklahoma City is going to put on the street next Christmas. And this is kind of a more enhanced look at that, just to give you an idea. There's some different possibilities once you get down to 29th Street and Douglas. So it's just roughly, we're showing on this map, it's just west of Douglas, but there's different possibilities in regards to how we access the east gate here at Tinker. We've also talked to the Department of Transportation. You guys have probably attended some of their meetings as they're going to upgrade this bridge here at Douglas and I-40. We talked to them in regards to making it strong enough so it can support, obviously, a streetcar in the future, and they have said that that's what they're going to do, so we believe them. So, yet again, this would be a great opportunity to access the Air Force Base. 25,000 or more folks working there every day. This would give them an opportunity to both get there and then get home or go to another place to do something. So this is something, obviously, that we're looking at. So from all these studies, we came up with a commuter corridor study, executive summary. This has been passed on to all the cities here. We've given various presentations to different groups over time. And we then moved from an RTD type situation where we were just planning this to more of an RTA where we're actually creating the RTA. And that's kind of where we are now. And the cities here in central Oklahoma, 6 of them, signed an MOU, and that will be ACOG with Oklahoma City, Del City, Norman, Edmond, Moore, Midwest City. And all of these cities then provided funding for us to go further and create this actual RTA. And we had a signing ceremony at the Santa Fe back in the fall of 2015, and we got everybody to sign this very big piece of paper so we could read it. And there's the old mayor of Midwest City. And then we worked from there to go further into how do we move forward from here. And we're evaluating other RTA models around the country, and we've decided, well, we needed to get a consultant in to kind of take us through this. This is a big step. So we have an MOU with all of the partner cities here in central Oklahoma that have been part of this. We have a consultant. The consultant has met with city staff and elected officials to kind of go over some of the things that each city wants. So they've met with Mayor Dukes and Guy Henson in regards to what Midwest City wants out of this. And then we have discussions ongoing with the task force in regards to looking at other metros around the country and what they've done and how they've done it, so we can take the best pieces of that and catch up with them and make these types of things. And one of the things we hear from a lot of folks is that when other major corporations are coming into the metro area, like Boeing and other folks, they want to find out, well, is there any transit here? And you probably heard this when Amazon was looking to relocate with 50,000 jobs, that they want a place with a regional transit system. We don't really have that. So this would then put us in that league with those folks so we could compete. And obviously, this isn't today, this is 5-10 years down the road, but this is where we are currently right now. And our consultant has written a white paper that we can make available to you. It's on our website at ACOG. And we're reviewing how we're going to set this group up so that there's representation for each group, so that each city involved in this process gets its voice heard. And Midwest City obviously would be one of those, as they have the route going to the east to Tinker Air Force Base. So and we're in the process right now. We're probably somewhere in the orange area in the middle. We are looking at probably 6 months to a year of a process to get the RTA figured out and a legal document making that. Then steps further on down the road would be marketing and educating everybody in regards to this. And then we would obviously then take this to a vote of the people locally to finance this. That's the big step, and that will be down the road in the future. So this is kind of where we are right now. Like I said, it's been about a 12-year trip to this point, and obviously we have further to go. But we wanted to let you know what we've been doing so far and where we're currently at. Take any questions?
From your presentation, you obviously have some working knowledge of the challenges that have been downtown with the rail system.
Yes.
The traffic, the disruption of traffic flow, the pedestrian problems.
Oh, yes.
How it's impacted the businesses. Trust me, I deal with it several times a week.
Right.
From my other life. The only thing that I would like to remind the city is if you think Southeast 15th Street was a nightmare, unless we are neck deep, feet first in this with some type of control over if this comes in, it won't be during our time frame. Southeast 15th Street was vacation because the disruption downtown with the rail and the traffic and access to points. Am I saying anything?
No, you're correct. And I think
has been an absolute
I agree.
challenge.
And
the one thing that we do have in our favor on this is that a lot of where we would gain
Right.
is already got rail on it. The disruption in our everyday traffic wouldn't be as bad as it has been with Oklahoma City having to go lay brand new rail, and we've
Right.
already got that preserved and in existence. There will be some disruption. You're absolutely right, but not to the extent that Oklahoma City has suffered. Is
Yeah,
that a
that-
true
that's-
statement?
We
that's
just
fair.
need to make sure that we have somebody from the city that
It won't be any of us.
No,
well, I know.
but I can say, because I was on the Regional Transit Dialogue 8 years ago, when we started doing a lot of this stuff, and went through the dreaming stage to this. And the first thing that I learned on that is, if you wait until you have to have rapid transit,
Right.
it's too late.
Right.
And a good example, and one of the, to me, one of the great examples is the DART system in Dallas, which is a complete success. It's incredibly well run. The advantage to Midwest City, and that's what got us in on this, is we have an existing rail line that right now there's weeds on it, but the rail line is there.
Right.
And to do that, and we have even a couple of areas identified in Midwest City where it'd be great stops for it.
Sure.
And that's the main thing about this is and that's why sometimes it's a hard sell, because you have to sell it before you need it.
Right.
Because if you wait until you need it, it's too late. Or those $350 to $660 million projects are suddenly $660 to $1 billion projects if you don't get them when you can.
I agree, and we've heard, unfortunately, we've heard news from ODOT in regards to widening interstates. I know I-40 is going to be widened again, but I-35 from Oklahoma City down to Norman is basically a parking lot at times, and Oklahoma City, ODOT, has no right-of-way left in order to widen that road. So what other choice do we have? I mean, right now it's somewhat congested at times, but we look at this, we do a 30-year plan for the region, and some of our numbers that we're seeing in the future, we're going, well, how are we going to fit these people down these particular roads? And it spills then over onto your section line roads. And there are times when we have a wreck on I-40 and everybody jumps on the 29th and on the 15th. And I know how to zigzag through all the roads here, but this gives you another option in that regards. And the other night, I think we were going through the Moore area after the OU football game and looking at all the red lights going north to Oklahoma City and going, wow, if there was a train from Norman to Oklahoma City, you know everybody would be on that train. And that works for people that live in Midwest City, because you catch that train downtown and then catch the train to Midwest City. And you don't get so frustrated, because I know we all don't like to be on the parking lot at times. But I agree with you also. It's a question of planning ahead. It's too late once we get to the point where we can't move around, and we feel like we've got to at least plan for the future and get this ball rolling down the road and get there. And we know the costs are going to go up. That's just the way it is.
So
Thank
what
you.
would be the estimated cost per ride?
Per ride, that I think they were looking at something like $2 to $3. And I know I was in Denver recently. It was $9 to go from the airport to downtown, but then you could use that same ticket all day. So if you had to go somewhere else on that same system, you could then use the ticket again. So there's different ways of pricing it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any further discussion? Mr. Sharp, I want to thank you for taking time
No
out
problem.
to come and
Thank you.
briefing us. And again, I'm sorry you got caught
That's
in
fine.
the fray of
That's fine.
911, but the baby's now in your lap.
Thank
so-
you, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is PC 1929, discussion consideration of approval of the revised preliminary plat of the Turtlewood addition described as a part of the southeast quarter of Section 10, Township 11 North, Range 1 West. Mr. Harless?
Thank you, Mr. Henson. Yes, sir. This item is a replat of the preliminary plat, and it was originally preliminary plat under the previous subdivision regulations. It will also be, we're considering it under the previous subdivision regulations because of the time that the application was made. The applicant is moving forward with this in order to redo some things with circulation on this. And there's two notes that staff would like to bring up that we need to take into consideration. One is that there was a lot of concern about the naming of the street, Windsong Drive. That name will be changed December 5th, or will likely be changed at December 5th Planning Commission meeting. I know there's a number of people that are interested in that that are here tonight. So that meeting will be held December 5th, and then that recommendation will be made to the next council, which would be actually the first council meeting in January, and will likely be changed to Snapper Lane. The other thing that to take into consideration on this is that this is a large development, and as this development has happened, there has been some drainage issues that's been brought up to by surrounding property owners. mainly to the property owner to the west that has about 7-acre development there. Staff has visited with the property owner on a number of occasions. I think it's important to realize that one of the reasons that we hear these items and bring them forth is so that we can gather information from surrounding property owners. I think that maybe some of the engineering, the drainage, may have not been done considering what the overall drainage to that area may be. And maybe a better way of putting that is sheet drainage brought to one point and released onto the neighborhood or to the neighbor to the west. And so I guess as we go forward with this item tonight, and I'm sure we're going to hear from one of the property owners as well as the applicant's engineer, is that maybe we consider tabling this. Staff would recommend that we table this until the January 23rd meeting. That'll give the chance for, instead of waiting to do the drainage improvements, to review those by staff, that'll give a chance for the engineer to provide some drainage improvements to the engineering, chance for the staff to review those, and then make a recommendation instead of waiting until afterwards to do that, as previous subdivision regulations dictate.
Actually, I would like to, we do have a resident, Mr. Bo Peeler, is in attendance, and Mr. Peeler, I'd like to call you to the podium, and we'd like to hear from you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me or hearing me out this evening. I actually thought I was coming up here for a quick 5-minute discussion with the mayor at 5 o'clock and found out I get to present to you guys, and I was going to hand off some paperwork and be done with it. So if I could, I'd like to at least pass this out. I think Mr. Harless correctly addressed my concern. I've been at this issue for quite some time in terms of my concern over the drainage, and I'm not alone. With me is John Earl, the neighbor to my west, and another neighbor, Dale Sledge, is a pilot, commercial pilot.
Hey, Mr. McCott, what's your address? Where you live?
I'm sorry, 2302 South Webster Drive. And if you're looking at that drawing, I think it does say 2302 over there. So, and Dale Sledge was not able to be here because he's flying this evening. So, I'm not going to necessarily read to you the letter I wrote there. I thought I was just going to drop off. But what I would want to say is that I've been talking with the City of Midwest City Management. I've talked with Guy, Patrick, and Billy many, many times, and I want to tell you that it's been with utmost respect and help, and they've done a great job explaining the code and how engineering works in terms of, you know, there's calculations and what have you. So I do honestly think that they felt like what they were allowing Home Creations to do next door to me would work out. I have lived there for 17 years. I have 7 acres and some livestock back there, and honestly never have witnessed running water going across my property until now. I voiced those concerns early on before a lot of the dirt moving occurred, only to be told that there are calculations, there's a lot of engineering that goes into this, and the words like historical flow and the historical lay of the land and things like that are taken into consideration. Even the brush and the dense trees that were over there were supposed to have been taken into consideration. So all I had to do was trust that, okay, this is going to work out. Well, I would just tell you that it hasn't. We are inundated with water every time it rains any significant amount. I understand that the retention pond's designed to take on water and then release it onto mine, but when it does, it really does release it. So I would just encourage you, if you can, look at my letter. It pretty much says what I just said. If you would like for me to explain the pictures, I certainly can do that. But I do have some recommendations in this letter that I came up with and coordinated with my neighbors. And, you know, I think Billy described it well. I think we need to pause this approval of them continuing to build. My concern, as anyone's, is, you know, this addition, I don't have exact numbers, but in my estimation, it's about a quarter of the way through. And there's only one paved street that really feeds into this retention pond. And I'm telling you, when it rains, that water flows. And then when the rest of the addition's complete and all the streets are in, and you start talking about sidewalks and concrete driveways and the roof flow and into the gutters and all, you know, that's gonna create 3 or 4 more times, and that's just me talking, it's probably more than that, of water that's gonna continue to come to me. So that retention pond's gonna fill up quicker, and it's gonna drain with massive force. So what I would like to see happen is another study, a third-party engineering study or something that would take into consideration current conditions as they are now and what's happening to me and my neighbors in terms of the water flow, and see if there are other ways to configure the drainage over there. There are options, I think, and I've provided a rough picture in the very back that would possibly address that, and I can get to that if we want to walk through the pictures. And then the other thing is trash. Everything that gets thrown down by those construction workers on that street ends up in that retention pond, then it ends up on my property. I've been cleaning up trash for I can't tell you how long. So while we're working through this, at a minimum, can we get a screen or something put over that concrete tube to at least screen out the trash and construction debris as they continue to work? If you would like, I can talk to these pictures quickly. The very first one was taken back in '05. That was before any of the land was cleared whatsoever. And you can see when you look down on it to the right, there's dense brush. There was deep caverns over there as well that took on a lot of water. And as you can see in the upper section there, there's a pond, although it's pretty dry there. That pond was always pretty much dry. When you look at my property, it's clear in the back. You can see where the red dot that's kind of blocking things, but the area in question is across there, and you can see the coloration. I used to always mow that. I brush hogged that. It was never washed out. And then if you look further to the left, there's a little pond there. It was always dry, as you see it there most of the time. It filled up when heavy rains came, but then it would dissipate and be dry again for the most part. I would tell you that for the years I lived there, I continually brush hogged this area. It always had green grass growing in this area, and I really honestly feel like most of the rain and downfalls were absorbed by this thick underbrush and trees and structure to my east. So fast forward a little bit, and you can see that it's all been cleared, scraped down to just dirt. There's the retention pond. All of that dirt was moved to the east to create hills, and so I have a little bit of trouble figuring out what historical flow means when you change the land. It changes the historical flow, which is what's happened here. The one street I referred to earlier is there, going left to right, and then you can see where they've done the other streets to finish the addition once they start up again. That is just one street, and again, I reiterate, my concern is when the rest of them go in with all the other housing, it's going to be a lot more water. I circled in red, if you can kind of tell where the water collects. It flows onto my property. It gets onto John's property next door. It's about ankle to knee deep on John's property, even outside of the pond area. When the pond takes on enough water, it overflows and then starts moving towards Dell Sledge's property, and I have these pictures in here. The red circles to the north of Dell Sledge's property are areas where water collects. I don't know that the homeowner is quite aware where it's coming from. I've talked to him before and he was a little confused. He's an elderly gentleman. But it pulls up in his yard and it ends up going in the Frolic Village drainage system as it tries to dissipate there. The next picture is a picture standing in the Turtlewood area facing west. And that's my fence line there, which, by the way, that's starting to bend over again due to the water pressure. And you can note that the cement blocks in that picture were provided in conjunction and coordination with the city and Home Creations to try to avoid the erosion of my property, which was very, very bad leading up to them finally bringing dirt over and putting that concrete block in, and also sod. The next picture is just a close-up of a barrel I've stuck in the current. Those blocks there you see is where it was supposed to keep it from eroding, and that's already starting to peel out and erode. And I put that bucket there to keep my animals from breaking a leg and stepping off down in that. It's actually deeper than that, but I felt like that would at least deter them a little bit. The next picture is the same angle, again facing west from Turtlewood Addition, and what it looks like when it rains. And you can see there how it starts to flood my property and the downstream properties to my west. The next page, again, I've tried to, and I apologize for these pictures. I did this rather fast. I'm not a professional photographer, but I have thousands of pictures and hundreds of videos if you're interested in more entertainment. This picture is me standing on my property looking to the east as it was raining, and you can see there I have quite a river. Next picture over again is a picture of that barrel and the water as it runs past it. The next few pages are pictures that Dale Sledge had taken and provided me a while ago regarding his yard and what it looks like when it rains. His concern is he can't mow until the ground, hardens up, and sometimes that takes quite a while. He has some insurance, I believe. When he built his home a few years back, there was some requirements about a floodplain, and the water had to be so many feet away from his property. And he's drawn a line there showing 75 feet from his house and how much water is stacking up out there on that line. And if in this angle, this picture is taken looking pretty much to the northeast. So Turtlewood is above the tree line there, and my property, you can see the green shop in the left top corner. This is a picture of the other residence, which is across the street from Dale Sledge's property. The brick house you can see with the white fence, and that is water that comes around Dale's property, and it starts to drain into the Frolic drainage system. The next picture is one that I actually took today. It's the retention pond, and obviously it's dry now because it hasn't been raining, or it's less water in there. You can see where the dirt has started to fill it up, which in my mind changes the calculation in terms of how deep it should be to retain water and the flow to my property. It's showing the construction getting closer and closer, which isn't relevant to this other than the fact that they're moving along pretty well in that addition. Which, by the way, my issue is not about the houses being built. My wife's a realtor, and I'm sure she'll sell some of them someday. My issue is about my property and the erosion and what water does to things over time. And it's been a short while since they put that block in, and I already have lots of erosion starting, so I can't be too confident in the years ahead that the homeowners association will take care of my problems. The next page is the retention pond as it is today, and you can see, and that's taken to the south. And the purpose in taking that picture is, one of my recommendations is to reroute that drainage and even make the pond bigger. And I was told one time that if you make the pond bigger, it's not going to slow the water on my property. And that may be true when you do all these calculations, and I know they're complex. But what I would tell you is that it will at least hold more water for a longer period of time before it started draining onto my property. Because we are getting ready to get a lot more water, I believe, than the engineers thought that would be present. The markers in red is just my rendition of what could happen, and that is to make the retention pond longer to the south and hopefully deeper. And then the red line from the west to, or excuse me, from the east to the west is along the existing railroad track bed that is vacated now. And it is going to require, in my opinion, even in future developments of this same addition, some water considerations and drainage considerations in that area as well. And I feel like since that area is going to need some attention in terms of drainage, why not tie the two together and hopefully drain on into the Froelich drainage system, which is well defined and would be easy to get to with this route. I made a mistake and covered the culvert up with the red mark, but the one that at the end of the mark that heads back north again is actually a cement culvert that goes between two houses in Froelich. It may not be as large as it needs to be. That has to be something that needs to be looked at, but in my opinion, this could all drain and end up in that system that then runs into Soldier Creek eventually as it winds through the city. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I do appreciate your time and thought on this. Nobody. I prepared that today.
Okay, I have a question for Billy on this one. So my question is, the pre-existing Turtlewood addition and the retention pond that this gentleman is referencing, was that all deeded to the city? Is that why this is being presented to us, or does Turtlewood still have control over that, or the developer?
The developer still has control
SMC
over
or
that.
et cetera? Okay, so sir, my question is, have you tried to address these issues to them?
Yes, ma'am. Early on, and again, I probably didn't explain it as well as I should have, but Guy and his staff, along with the developers, I met with all of them several times, including the engineer. And, basically I was told they followed the code and the guidelines, and there's a lot of math that goes into this, and, I didn't have any other recourse but to believe them. I don't have the resources to fight this, nor does any one single property owner. But what I would tell you is I laid low for many months in a wait-and-see approach and gave everyone a chance. But I got to tell you, I can't, I felt like this is my opportunity to at least slow this thing down until we can address the drainage issue, because until now, I was not able to slow anything down.
Have you talked to anybody about the aspect of the nuisance that's been created on your property?
Other than venting to my friends and neighbors and relatives, no.
Well, he
Was this
has.
picture
taken today? Did you say this was taken today?
That particular one, yes.
We haven't had any rain. 36 days. But who's counting?
Hey, Mr. Peeler, I want to tell you something. I've been on this council for 8 years. You have presented the best case and done your homework probably better than anybody I have ever seen step up to that podium right there.
Well, thank you.
You have done a wonderful job.
I was about to say the exact same thing and suggest that you give out classes on how people come to present stuff to the council. This is well thought out, succinct, and it makes our lives easier. Thank you.
Appreciate that. You know, I'm here in peace. I want this to work out. I'm not against the addition, but I am wanting to protect my interests and work together to figure this out because
Is
it's-
the
wanna
guy from
know-
Turtlewood here? Is he here?
I want to know, when did this start, this problem with the water drainage?
when did the water problem
Yeah,
start?
when did it
It
start?
started pretty much the minute they skinned the earth and way before they actually started building.
What year? A year before?
I would have to go back and look,
Oh.
but it was sometime in '07, I think, where they cleared everything. So,
Yeah, because I remember that whole area. I can remember when they put that in, and there used to be trees and everything, and that was one of those go in and basically bulldoze every single thing that was green at the time.
right, and that was tough to watch and listen to.
Billy made a comment earlier about putting this on hold
Yeah.
in meeting and trying to rectify the situation, because you're well aware of my concerns about the sins of others, as Councilman Reed has mentioned, in the water. And there is no way that I could vote positive to do anything more in this area with this amount of water today, in who's counting, but 36 days of, we've had less than an inch of rain. I mean,
So you saying this been going on for 10 years? You
That
said-
addition, they cleared it and never did anything, and it actually kind of grew back up, and then they cleared it again. So, yeah, I think when they initially started the very first, and I'm apologize, I don't know the official names of all these phases, but the very first one next to Westminster, which is fully populated now with homes, when they cleared that, they cleared all of all the way up to my fence line, even then, and that addition started many, many years ago.
Can I ask, since there's somebody else that I think wants to speak on the same issue you are, that we have the Turtlewood gentleman get up and address this and then come back to you?
My name's John Rose. And
Step up to the podium and state your name and address, sir.
my name is John Earl, and I live to the west of Bow. And when I bought the land in, it's 2305 South Webster Drive. And what really got me on Bo's last picture, if you look, you see my property with the little pond right there. And he took this today. I have never had water in that pond unless it comes in, then it's dried up. There's water always in that pond now. And if you look even closer, you would see a little trail right above the pond. That's the only access that I have to the back property now. Before, it was, I have a Ford F-350 dually. Before they started moving all that dirt, I could go out there and never get stuck or anything. It was dry ground. I can't even think about going back there with my dually. I even got my zero-turn lawnmower got stuck. And that's what I'm putting up with. Plus, you know, the styrofoam coffee cups now in the pond and everything. It's not right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Now, Billy, you said that you're working on this with a engineer or something, and you wanted to table it?
Well, I would like, I mean, I think that my recommendations would be that we hear what the consulting engineer has to say in response to what we've seen in the pictures and then also heard. But there's a number of issues going on here. I mean, it's not just the stormwater running off, it's the amount of silt that is running off of the property, and that they're not complying with the erosion control and maintaining the pond the way they're supposed to. And I agree that Mr. Peeler has been more than patient with his neighbors on how they're doing the development, and this is a good time to pause and get the development done right, because that's what we want to do, is get it right.
I think that we give the developer an opportunity to speak if he wants to. If not, he can come back on the 23rd or 4th, whenever it is. But I just think it's fair.
Thank you. Good evening. Chris Anderson with SMC Consulting Engineers, representing the developer. I'm not the developer, I'm the
What is your
engineer.
address, sir?
815 West Main, Oklahoma City. All right, I'm going to back up a little bit. I was not aware of the drainage issue that was going to be discussed tonight. We had the preliminary plat on Planning Commission several weeks ago. It was approved. That issue did not come up, so I was not prepared for this presentation from Mr. Peeler tonight. But I'm going to back up a little bit and give you a little bit more history on the plat. The original preliminary plat was prepared by a different engineer many years ago. He actually did the first 4 plats in there, sections 1, 2, 3, and 4. At that time, he was let go by the developer, and I was asked to take over the project. I came in at that time, met with city staff. At that time, I believe it was Mr. Ron Green. I said, okay, this is, and what I noticed then also is that the original preliminary plat did not match the documents that I had been given for going forward in the future. And so I pointed that out to Ron, and he had said that during construction of, I'm not sure which phase it was, but there's a big water line that runs north and south through the project, and it's actually, I think, part of the land management group. It's a easement to the United States government, and when they were crossing that, they got too close to it and got shut down by the United States government. And at that time, the engineer came in and reworked the layout of this site. Originally, the boulevard went right up along the pipeline, and then after he reworked it, it scooted the entry over to where it's shown now. So at that time, I met with Ron and said, well, this is where I want. And he said, well, just come in with the Section 5 final plat. So that's what I did. I did the Section 5 final plat. Was not required to do an update at the preliminary plat at that time. Did the construction plans, went through the procedures, were approved, it was under construction. It came in recently, the developer wanted to do the next phase. Met with Kelly Gillis, and at that time she realized that the approved preliminary plat that was in her records didn't reflect what had already been built. And going forward, she asked that I turn in a revised preliminary plat just so that the records would match what had already been built. So we agreed to do that. So that's what's actually before you tonight, is just the approval of the revised preliminary plat. The Section 5 that has the detention pond and all that area, that's already built. It's done, but it doesn't match the preliminary plat that was on your records. So that's what this is doing tonight, is just revising that preliminary plat. So I already have an approved preliminary plat. I'm not asking for a new preliminary plat. It's just a revision to match the records. So I would say, let's go ahead and consider this preliminary plat tonight. It's not giving us the right to build anything else. Now, I will tell you that I have already submitted the plans for Section 6, and that should be coming up next month. I'm not sure the exact date on that, or maybe later this month. And maybe at that time, we get into the discussion on the drainage. But I would like to go ahead and have the preliminary plat considered tonight, because it's just a formality at this point. Yes. Oh, gosh, maybe about 5 years ago, I think, when we first started looking at it. Yes, I have. I've had several meetings with Mr. Peeler. After the detention pond had been put in, and he had contacted the developer with issues that he had, met on site with him, then had another meeting with him and city staff and developers, and we came up with a plan. to take care of some of those issues. Well, like I said, I don't really want to get into the drainage portion of it tonight, but I will point out, and I haven't seen, obviously, Mr. Peeler's presentations. I haven't seen the photographs that you guys have seen. Well, listen, I will tell you that one of the exhibits he didn't show to you is a copy of the United States Geological Survey map for that area. Thank you. Are you guys familiar with what those are, USGS maps? The USGS map shows a blue line running right through the middle of his property. That's waters of the United States. So when he had told me before he had never seen water going across his property, I was dumbfounded. I couldn't believe that. I mean, the USGS map, that's what it does. It shows historic drainage patterns. And obviously, they wouldn't have a blue line there unless they thought there was a lot of water going through there. So that's always been confusing to me. That's where the water goes. That's where it's always gone. Now, I can't say why he had never seen water going across his property before. I do know that when we walked out the site, coming up with a solution at the time, like you said, in my opinion, the developer has been over backwards to help him out on his property, added extra erosion control that wasn't required by the plans, came in and did grading on his property, installed sod, and when we were walking that out, I pointed out on his west property line that there were pipes under the fence. I pointed that out, and he said, "Oh, I've never seen those before." So I can't explain why he hasn't seen the water going across his property, but I do know that the USGS map shows a blue line running right through the middle of his property.
So you've been on this for 5 years, right?
Yes.
Okay, now you said it's been going on for 10 years, correct, Mr. Peeler? Approximately 10 years? Okay.
But again, let me
Okay.
suggest that we go ahead and vote on the preliminary plat. Like I said, I've got a final plat coming in, and we can consider the drainage issues at that time. Because this preliminary plat, it's not going to give us the right to build anything. It just gets the records up to date.
Which area is your future next, the section 6? Is that in tract 3 or that be in tract 2?
It's the area north of section 5, so it butts up to the north property line.
So that's the section 3 that we're looking at, the north of the Southeast 25th?
Yeah, I can't see the, but it's, yeah.
And that
the
area,
piece
does
that's up in
that
the
area drain
northwest
back
corner.
towards this same area?
Yes, that does drain back into that pond.
But then the size of the detention pond that's there is part of the plat that you're trying to get approved now, though, right?
No, that's already built. Like I said, the preliminary plat we're doing is just updating the records to show
But that's
that
part of what you're trying to do tonight.
the preliminary plat
detention
is,
pond.
yes. Well, the detention pond's already built.
Right.
It was already
But that's
approved
part
and
of
built in section
part of the
5.
discussion tonight, though.
Well, actually, it's not. The part of the preliminary plat that we got is the area that's in dark, and that does not include that detention. Well, yeah, part where we had an off-site easement, so that's part of it.
Okay,
yes.
I have another question. So you've been working on this for 5 years, so when did the other person start working on it?
That I don't know.
I mean,
I'm not
start
for sure.
building.
I'm not for sure when the first preliminary
Okay.
plat came in.
Can you clarify that for me, Jeff? Sorry.
What was it?
Your last question to him, as far as what's part of the preliminary plat and what's not part of the preliminary?
Well, in the picture, I seen the rectangle detention pond is part, that's on the west side of Southeast 25th, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So it is, I mean, to me, it looks like that detention pond may not be big enough, but I understand it. If it's already approved, I'm a little confused. I mean, we have a problem there. And also, I'd like to kind of address, I've walked on the property before with Mr. Peeler, probably a year or two ago. And I've had enough property, and many of us do, where you can have a grassy area, and I've got a particular area at my house that when you get a 5-inch rain, you're gonna have a lot of water run over it. 2 days later, I can still mow it. And I don't think Mr. Peeler's denying that no water has ever drained through that property. I think he's saying that he's been able to manage it and mow it and not have a ditch wash through it. So I'm just trying to explain, in my mind, I could see that both of them are correct. There's a blue line. Bo probably acknowledges there's a blue line, and water did run through it, but I'd say it was managed, and he could still mow it. In time, it looks like that he could end up having a significant ditch practically cutting through the center of his property to where you really can't even get to the other side of it. So I see a future problem coming if something's not done, because it's getting to where it's unmanageable for him.
And plus, too, it only stands to reason, and I'm not a geologist, a hydrologist, or an engineer, But if you take a piece of land that's got grass and trees on it and you scrape it clean, there's obviously gonna be problems.
Correct.
And-
That's
and,
why we
Mr.
designed it.
Peeler- And Mr. Peeler hasn't had issues before, and now he's got issues now. So there's no denying any of that. It's the best interest of the city to pull the reins back and make sure that we don't make any future mistakes on creating a problem, not only for your boss, but also for the surrounding neighbors. And this council in the last 2 years have dealt with more than our share of drainage issues that have come up as a result of us overlooking or not identifying issues as they came up on these plats. So with that being said, the chair would entertain a motion.
I wouldn't recommend turning it down at this point. Well, I understand that he wants a vote, but I think that I would recommend that we table this till the 23rd until we can investigate this a little farther. We became aware of this about 10 minutes before the meeting upstairs. I saw the pictures when y'all were presented them, actually after, a few minutes after. We're not sure exactly what's going on. I would not encourage us to, or recommend that we go approve something to build 213 lots. But I think denying it would send me back, if I understand, it would probably be 6 months before we'd have to be allowed to do that. But I don't think that we need to deny it. I think that we take the information that we have, give us a chance to evaluate it. I think there are some things that the design engineer is correct in that the USGS maps do show that there's drainage through that area.
I'm
So-
laboring with either making a motion to deny it or making a motion to table it, not to
Is there-
approve it.
And I,
I'm sorry, I'm still not clear, Billy, what does happen if it's denied at this point? They have to go back here and apply to the planning commission with
they'd have to go back to the planning commission with a preliminary plat, in 6 months. But what I'm not sure is how incorrect this plat is with the old one. I knew that it was incorrect with the old one. That's one reason why we're rehearing this. But I don't know what that does as far as building permits and where we're at with all that.
So there sound like some corrections needs to be done, correct?
Yeah, there are some corrections.
Okay.
And that's why that's why it's
So
here.
we probably
But
need to table this so you can find out what correction and what's going on.
Under the old subdivision regulations, the improvement plans could be submitted after the preliminary plat, and that's what the applicant's wanting to do. And I would advise that we'd go ahead and work through those issues before we get the preliminary plat.
I've
From
got
looking at-
great faith in Billy, and if he says to table it, I think we do.
Yes.
But if you want to vote, I'm sure we can do
No,
no.
if you're recommending, it sounds like somebody's gonna recommend the deny, and I don't wanna go through that, so, if you wanna table it, I would ask that it be tabled.
Right. I motion that we table.
Yeah, I'd like to make a
Second.
motion, or did
I'm
we
sorry,
table
she's
it, or you got it? I'd second it.
Okay.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this issue? Any
Wait,
further
I
discussion?
need a clarification. When are we tabling it to?
To the 23rd, so they can do everything that he said.
The 23rd of?
January.
Thank you.
Because luckily, we don't have a meeting in the second half of December.
I'm just,
Can I just,
on the-
one thing that would make, I'm sure, all of us happy when we came back on the 23rd, is if you've sat and talked to these two gentlemen down here to try and alleviate their concerns and everything. I know that you guys have, but that would make us, I mean, as a council, we always like it when two opposing sides try and work it out themselves.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, I do have a motion and I have a second.
You have
Any
two
further
people with their
discussion?
hands raised.
John Earl again. You table it, and there's a homeowners association that as soon as the developers get out of there, then we have to deal with the homeowners association. And we know about homeowners association. You know, we can't.
But that's not something that's truly a
You're not
concern
gonna have
on
to
our
deal with not on what we're doing now. You're
No.
not gonna have to deal with the homeowner association.
No,
Well,
sir.
that's, yeah, as soon as, they want to get this all done because then their liability it's gone. And that's what we're fighting also.
But that's why we're putting this off, so Billy, and I have wonderful, great faith in Billy and his team, they do incredible work. That's why we're gonna put it off till the 23rd, and hopefully the three of you together will get together with open minds to try and figure out how to work this out together.
Well, and I don't think I'm kind of trying to hear what you're saying as a homeowner. It's not put back in their court to figure it out. It's gonna be up to the engineers
I know
to
that.
come up with some different solutions to present to the city.
Well,
But
that's what we're saying.
now
maybe they
you've
can
got
get
our
together.
attention, and you'll hear some, I think, some good results.
Okay, Mr. Thompson?
My name is Charles Thompson, 10400 Northeast 4th. I have a question. It's interesting because I've sat through a couple times where the city has had issues with draining. How does the process of the city, like, I guess the engineering company gives you a plat and they plan everything out and stuff. Are they liable for something like this? Because obviously it's caused problems. I mean, how does the city deal with this? Seems like this should have been handled before they started building the houses. Is that how it happens? What happens in this situation?
Well, the process is, Charles, that somebody wants to build a house or a development.
Or a bunch of houses?
A development. They present a PUD, or planned urban development, to plans to the city. And then the city sits down and looks at all the information. Then if they approve it, then it goes to the planning commission. And then the planning commission looks at the same information that the community development looks at. And generally, they will go with the recommendation of the community development division to either approve or disapprove. And then it comes to the council for approval. So there's 3 layers of approval that each PUD has to go through.
But I don't,
And
his question was, can we hold the engineer who did it
I was
responsible?
getting to that. Now, once it gets into the development stage and we start seeing issues, obviously we can do exactly what we're doing here and coming back to the developer and say, we've got the issues we need to correct. Now, if a PUD gets completed and none of those issues addressed, then the issue either falls back onto the homeowner to correct, or it falls back on the city, and that's what we've dealt with over the last 18 months. This council has chosen to be a little bit more proactive in looking at these things, and of course, listening to our citizens when they come forward with issues and trying to mitigate these issues before they ever become a problem, and that's why we're here tonight. But if in fact the PUD gets approved and it gets built and it gets completed and the developer pulls out, then each individual homeowner or the city ends up biting the dust on it, if you will. Does that make sense?
It kind of makes sense, but you just told me, what I heard is there's 3 levels of scrutiny before these things get, so it's gone through 3 levels of scrutiny and we still have this flood issue. So how does that happen?
Well,
I mean, who's responsible for that?
It's simple. It's simple. You know, we have USGS maps that tell us, well, the water's supposed to flow here, the 100-year floodplain, the 500-year floodplain, and basically, it's a swag as to what's going to happen when you clearly. And Jeff, jump in here anytime. It's a swag on what's going to happen once you go in there. And one of the issues I've talked about before is, why do we allow developers to go in and clear off every tree on a particular development? Because you're removing the natural barriers that have been in place for eons. And so it's just a swag, Charles.
Well, part of this one too, I believe it's an older plat, so a lot of this was approved about how many years ago?
Yeah, the development started a decade ago.
And they are under more scrutiny now, I believe, but this was one of them it was platted years ago, the preliminary plat. But it's a difficult deal. I mean, you talk about removing trees when you're creating these lots, and to get the grades proper, you have to take a lot of trees. So I mean, it's a complicated process, but there definitely needs to be more scrutiny and a very good engineer, and probably sometimes a third-party engineer, to make sure that all these calculations are right. some of the
That's what I
engineers.
was just wondering. I mean, I gotta get, I'm a plumber, and if my drains don't drain, then I get, it's my responsibility. So I'm just wondering if an engineer came up with
But it's only
something
your
like this.
responsibility for so many years.
Well,
Right.
it's harder, I mean,
So, I mean, you go a
water
couple years
drains
outside of that,
downhill,
you're not
but at
responsible.
what rate, you know,
Right.
in volume, and it,
It
It's
just,
it's hard to tell, you know, and obviously, once the plat gets done and the developers walk away, then basically the liability issue walks away with them.
so the city is really not on the hook for any of that then, because we don't do any of the engineering or anything, but we approve the plans, right?
Well, these things are done to subdivision regulation standards. They're minimum standards. And the very first thing that engineers or builders or people ask is what are your minimum standards? And that's what I want to build to. And so in a perfect world, if they built to the minimum standards, if everything was designed to those minimum standards and water did exactly what it was supposed to, and we only had 25-year floods or 50-year floods, then things would work the way they're supposed to. That's not the way it really happens out in the field, and when these things are built, and especially when you go strip the property, and then erosion control fails. We don't get the proper detention the way it's supposed to happen. You get all this silt coming down. Those pictures would look a little bit different if it was clear water instead of red water. It's much more disturbing to see all that red water going across the property.
I guess
Anyway,
that's my question.
There's minimum standards, and the standards are just that, they're minimum, and they're barely good enough to get by in a perfect world.
And you said that when you got into it, the plat was wrong that they had at the city, and you actually had to update the plat, is that correct? So was the plat inaccurate then?
The plat's a legal document that lays all the lots out, gives the legal description of each of those lots, and somehow the plats that the developer was going off of did not match with the plats that the city had. I don't know how that happens.
Okay.
I mean, I have ideas, but.
Thanks.
A follow-up question. On the retention ponds, who is responsible to, or is someone responsible to inspect those retention ponds? You're talking about an excess accumulation of silt and so forth in those ponds, and they're not being upkept the way that they're supposed to be. Who's responsible for that?
Well, the construction of them is overseen by community development, by engineering, and when they're done, if they're built to the plans, then over time, as they're used and they become a facility, the water runs into stormwater watches over them.
Mm-hmm. Right, but I mean, is there an obligation on the part of the city or a state entity to go out and periodically inspect these retention ponds to see that they're operating the way that they're supposed to, is what I'm asking?
Well, there's not a entity that goes out and inspects all the detention ponds now.
Well, the DEQ guys, during the construction of it, they were out there a lot.
They look, and
Right,
if we
but
are
once it's in
notified
play,
like
this one has been in play right now, is anybody else responsible for going out there and inspecting it and saying, hey, whoever owns it, which as I understand is the developer, you're not maintaining this, and that's what's causing the problem?
Well, now that we're aware of it, we will pursue that, yes, and put it back into its design state. But yes, all these things, again, we were unaware that this was happening.
I think she's asking who's responsible for erosion control and making sure that the banks are stabilized and all of that.
Yeah, but it's multi-departments. If there's trash on a site, code enforcement can come in and cite them. If there's silt running into the road, stormwater is there. Community development, if there's anything like that needs to be noted, we also have that authority. So it's really all city staff.
Okay.
When there's a large storm, those things fail, and the developer doesn't want to take responsibility of thinking, well, we put up silt fences and they failed, we'll put them back up. It's a constant battle.
Mr. Peeler, you have anything to add before we?
Well, I just want
wrap
to say,
this up?
on that subject, there's countless berms out there that they've created all along that dirt to try to keep that water, but it's not working. I just wanted to say, there's a prior layout or plat, as you call it, that showed that detention pond in a different location. That addition way that, I guess, had been submitted a long time ago, but that's here, there, now. I don't know why they decided to move it. I would tell you, it's kind of a joke, but it's not. I retired after 32 and a half years of federal service from the FAA. And I would tell you that not all government documentation is correct. So the geological survey, although there might be a blue line on it, I've lived on that property 17 years, and I tell you, there's not been running water across my property. And there seems to be a win or lose tone. I just want my property to not be damaged. And so, you know, from that perspective, I'm just here to try to provide my perspective and my history on my property, and that's the best I can do. And it's okay to be wrong. I mean, you know, 2 + 2 is 4 every time, and all those calculations work in the computers and stuff, and then when it really actually happens, sometimes it just doesn't work. So how do we fix it? And that's kind of where I'm at now.
Thank you, Mr. Peeler. Thank you for being here. Now, we do have a motion and we have a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstentions? Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Eads? No. Byrne?
No.
Dawkins?
Aye.
Dukes?
No.
Reed?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Motion to table.
Okay, the motion to table carried. Next item on the agenda.
This is PC 1928, public hearing with discussion consideration of approval of Sooner Rose Addition Phase 3 preliminary plat for the property described as a tract of the lands lying in the southwest quarter of Section 4, Township 11 North, Range 2 West of the Indian Meridian, City of Midwest City, Oklahoma County, Oklahoma.
I'll be glad to answer any questions that council may have on this subject.
It's a public hearing.
Any questions, Mr. Harless? This is a public hearing. Anyone in the audience having anything on this issue, please come forward. Any further discussion?
1 second. Having technological issues.
Move to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Next item is discussion consideration of appointing 2 members to the Midwest City Tree Board for 3-year terms ending on November 10th, 2020. We would recommend this item be struck. We'll be returning it at the next meeting with an appointment for 1 member to the board, and that appointment will be made by the Ward 5 council
Ward
person.
5. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it. Amen to that. Yes.
We move into the new business public discussion of our agenda. Anybody in the audience have anything to bring before the council?
Excuse me, Ms. City Clerk, do we need a motion to strike the item by the council? I know we recommended it.
Move to strike.
Second.
We got a motion and a second on the other item. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions. We now move into the public,
further information.
Further information, part of our agenda. No further discussion on the further information. Hearing none, we are hereby adjourned from Midwest City Council. I now call to order the Midwest City Municipal Authority. We have two discussion items.
First item is discussion consideration of approving the minutes of staff briefing and regular meetings of November 14th, 2017.
Move to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions. Next item.
Discussion consideration of accepting the report on the current financial condition of the Sheraton Midwest City Hotel at the Reed Conference Center for the period ending October 31, 2017.
Motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions. We now move into the public discussion of our agenda. The Midwest City Municipal Authority. Anyone in the audience having anything to bring before the authority? Hearing none, we are hereby adjourned. Call to order the Midwest City Memorial Hospital Authority. We have two discussion items.
First item is discussion consideration of approving the minutes of the staff briefing and regular meeting of November 14th, 2017.
Move to approve.
Oh. Second.
We have several motions to approve and one
Second.
second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Next item.
Discussion consideration of action to reallocate assets, change fund managers, or make changes in the statement of investment policy guidelines and objectives. No
Move to
action
approve.
is necessary on this.
Okay.
With no action being necessary, there is new, we get into the new business public discussion of the hospital authority. Anyone having anything to bring before the authority? Hearing none, we are hereby adjourned. Good evening, y'all.